Here, I'll take my slimy cup off your table.
If you like.
So I'm going to provide you blue sheets. You can sign it with another name also.
I like seeing Barry here with the names on.
So thank you for attending this CALEXT session. We don't usually meet, but this time we'll make it. So please feel do we have a JavaScribe?
I can do that.
Okay, good, perfect. And do we have a minute taker? It's going to be a very short session, so should we designate a minute taker?
Everybody's in the back.
Yeah.
I could probably do it, except I haven't done it and I don't know. So.
Okay, but I mean, if you just take the notes and you can send us a TXT file and we will deal with that.
Okay.
So perfect. Sounds really good.
So should I go into share slides here?
Yeah, we start with the share slide.
To a full screen version. There. This is PDF, right?
Yeah, PDF.
Well, I'm not that
So
far,
nice.
so, you know.
I guess I need to. This is a PDF through a browser.
Yeah.
as opposed to-
I don't know.
So what I want to do is.
So the next slide.
Oh, sure.
Do you want the wishes?
Yeah.
You know, they're all bushy.
Yeah, this is still the extra.
Okay.
But I thought I had signed the extra blue sheet. Are there two extra blue sheets now?
There's
They
always
should
two.
be. I have the one that everyone signs. I guess it's the wrong one. Yeah, I'll just correct that.
Okay, so, sorry.
Yeah, I think
Sorry,
we are.
people, you have to redo it now.
So we guess everyone is aware of the not well. If you are not, please read the slide. Yeah, next slide. So I see a few of the people online, so thank you for joining us. We have a JavaScript minute taker. So I'd like to go through the different status of the current drafts. So let's start with the IETF CALEXT CalDAV attachment draft. So the question is, how do we move that draft forward? Because it's now in the IEG, I guess, ISG queue. So maybe Alex can tell us a few words on it.
Yeah, so this document went to ISG. ISG basically signed off on it, and then there was a follow-up HTTP reviews, and Julian raised lots of questions, and he basically said, such a horrible design, it violates all sort of HTTP recommended things. We downgraded it to informational, but there is still a list of outstanding issues. Ken, I'm waiting for you to do something.
Running into the door.
So I have to press the button?
Yeah.
Recall, I need to add more text describing why we've gone to informational, which is basically outlining Julian's objections to the current design. And we need to find a way to allow content disposition to be used as a request header. Do we just make an IANA request to do that, or do you have any recommendations?
I think Julian's point was that this really need to be brought to HTTP-based working group. I thought that was no-brainer, but Julian disagreed, so I think it's probably better to bring it to the working group, to HTTP-based, as a question.
So just post that as a question to the list?
Yes, and then
The alternative is to do what Julian suggested and use the slug header, but existing implementations are just going to ignore that and continue to do what they're doing.
right, that's a whole discussion about this document. I think we should post to HTTP base, and of course the risks here are if people don't like it there, what's happen next. But I can probably reach out to people and soften the blow if the one is coming, but I think we should do this anyway. Just see what happens.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Obviously, as you know, we're struggling between good protocol design, which Julian's arguing for, and I'm all for in practice. However, this has already been deployed by several clients and servers, Apple being the biggest one. So it's out there. The horse has left the barn.
Right. Okay. So, suggestion: can you revise the document to address everything but the content disposition?
Yes.
And then, so I want to make sure that all the other comments are addressed, and then I'll take care of the rest. As in
That sounds
posting to
good.
HTTP BIS working group and asking for the question. All right.
All right. Thank you.
So the plan is that we address most of the comments and then we submit it to,
All but one comment, which is about use of content disposition. The other thing is this document has been in limbo for 9 months or however long. So I probably should return it to the working group.
yeah.
Okay.
So,
Well, anyway, this is something that I don't know, it's up to chairs to decide whether you want another working group last call or not. It can be a short one, just on the changes accumulated so far, but up to you.
well, I think that we should, well, if there are major revision, my opinion would be that we go through the working group and we do a last call so that we can agree within the working group and then contact the other working group, including HTTP BIS, and see, because, well, there is no way to go around that, so sooner or later, so that we're ready when you do the Shepherd write-up, we have good feeling that it's going to go through the process and being published. Okay, so that's an action for the AD to, reject it and move it back to the working group, I guess.
Well, I'm waiting for Kent for new revision anyway, and then I
Okay.
can just update the status in the tracker and we can.
Okay, right. Okay, good. So the action point is that Ken provide a new revision, and then we move back to the working group. We go to the last call, contact the HTTP working group, and then see where we go. Okay, so thank you, Cam. Now, the two next drafts. So, Michael, can you give us a status of where we are and how close we are from the working group last call? Michael, can you hear us? Oh,
Is he in Java or?
yeah, is Jabber?
I have not seen anything written.
Okay.
Mike Douglas, no, he's on Java.
Right, he's in Java, but.
He hasn't said anything.
Can you?
I can hear you. He says I can hear you.
Okay, good.
Can you join that call and, it's called, or, I'm saying.
Right.
So my understanding of these two drafts is that we're pretty close to working group last call. Some implementation are in progress. But what I would like to, what would be helpful is that at least we get more review on that so that we can send them being relatively confident that we have made a good work on that. Because currently we're really missing some of the reviews.
Mike says, I think they're pretty well ready to go.
Okay. So now what I'm asking to the working group, or at least the people online and here in the room, is that to provide some review, because this is clearly what we're missing. And when I'm writing the Shepherd write-up, usually I have to admit that it's not clear to me how much review have been done. I mean, it's not clear if it has been reviewed outside the IETF or even implemented outside the IETF, and it's well working. And I'm not very happy about sending my AD saying, yeah, I reviewed the draft, but...
Yeah, I second that, especially if there are no responses on the mailing list. What would also help is people to tell if they implemented it.
Yeah.
Because, at least we know how widely deployed it is, so it almost counts as reviews. So.
Okay.
Ken on Jabber has just said he will review it again.
Okay, good. So, Michael, is that the last version? The published version, is that the one we have to review? That the one you expect to be sent to the working group last call, or do you expect another version? And if so, when do you expect it to be published?
I thought some of them were expired, actually. So if they're expired, it would be really good to just refresh them to make sure that, doing working group last call on expired draft, this is not great.
Okay.
Just,
So the planning could be, Michael, that by mid-April, could you provide the version you expect the working group to review? And from the working group, can we have people that commit to review those two drafts? So I'm wondering if I can ask people that commit to review to raise their hands in the room or say something on Jabber.
Mike says yes from me.
Okay, Mike, okay. So who is going to review the draft? Can we have them? Okay, one. We got Ken. 2 reviews. Can we have one more?
I don't want to put my hand up as another fast now.
Okay.
There's no one else on here but we probably find something like soon.
Okay. And if you know, the people from CalConnect that might be aware of this draft, it would be good that they can provide whether it has been implemented or not. So we expect to have at least 3 reviews. So I hope that my plan is to send those to the ISG, to the AD, by the end of April. Is that a correct milestone? I think so. Okay, so now the new work. So by end of April, that should be the only one remaining on our list, GS calendar. And we will have a presentation right now. Oh, So here, if it doesn't work, you just say click, and Donald is gonna move.
Okay, hi, I'm Robert Stepanek, Fastmail. There's the slides. So, JS Calendar, as Daniel has pointed out, newly adopted a couple of months ago. The version in the agenda was written as 0, but the latest version is version 2, which we submitted shortly before the final IETF 101 deadline. Yeah, I think that doesn't work yet.
I can improve things here a second.
You do view full screen.
Yeah.
Slideshow.
Right, but that's, unfortunately, I didn't really.
Oh, I see. You're in progress.
There we go.
Yeah, full screen.
There it is. So. Okay.
All right, perfect, thanks. So as I said, any discussions, please, around the latest version 2, which is on Data Tracker.
There is a bullet that said full screen, so maybe I was thinking.
I think we are.
That's
There are 3 bullets on each slide, so I think we are fine.
Okay, good.
Okay. So JS Calendar. What are the goals? JS Calendar attempts to define a new calendaring data format and exchange format using iJSON. When someone thinks about calendaring and JSON, typically RFC 7265 comes to mind, which is JCal, which was the initial attempt to represent iCalendar data in JSON. In contrast to the JCal RFC, with JS Calendar, we are both working on defining new semantics and a new representation for calendaring data. So it's broader in scope in that respect. The goal are to define types for calendar events, tasks, and groups, with groups being a small wrapper around tasks and events. Notably, what isn't here, what is defined in iCalendar is vJournal. We deliberately took that out of scope since in our experience it's not very well supported anyway, and it's not actually much related to calendaring data in a more narrow sense. The goal is to use it as an alternative to iCalendar, which means that we are deliberately not restricting ourselves to the current semantics of the iCalendar data model. Of course, we are aiming at a very large, useful overlap in semantics, but we also took the liberty to omit parts or add new semantics where appropriate. Next slide, please. So what is the status? This has been worked on a couple of years already now. For quite some time as an informal RFC. Now that we got adopted by CALEXT, we got feedback from both IETF and CalConnect members. Could you please scroll a little bit more down?
Sure.
So there are a couple of implementations of variants of the earlier RFC proposals flying around. One of them, and the most recent in my understanding, is the implementation in the open source Cyrus IMAP project. There are other vendors using earlier variants of this RFC proposal in their products, and also at Fastmail we are using in production an earlier variant of the proposed data model. So next slide, please. So in terms of the RFC, we are quite confident, following the review feedback that we got over the last years, that we are covering most of the ground. There are probably still a few changes coming, and following this IETF meeting, I will upload a new RFC draft based on the latest experience of bringing Cyrus IMAP up to the latest spec. I don't foresee any big changes. Nevertheless, of course, if there if there is any feedback, big or small, we will be very, very happy to receive input on that one. So we deliberately asked for feedback on this latest draft version, and hopefully we can manage to get this to last call before the next IETF meeting. That's it from my side.
So thank you for the presentation. So my understanding is that it's pretty much implemented. Well, we do have a lot of experience on that one, but it does not appear on the mailing list. That's a key issue we have. So what I'm asking is that anyone that has an implementation and that I agree with the specs says +1, we got an implementation, eventually provide a description of that implementation, a link to that, and say whether they agree or not with the spec. The thing I would, and so since we have those implementations, it's a good starting point, but I want that to be, it's not an extension, so we need to have that properly done. So I'd like also to have some IETF review on that draft, especially the JSON part. I think that's the only thing that could be discussed somehow. So I think that's something we should start now, as I understand that the draft is pretty major.
Just a quick comment as AG. Remind me and send me a reminder. I'll ask art directorate as Jason experience to have a look at this.
Okay, right. So this is something I can do on my side, so I will do that as soon as possible. And we need additional review. So I think the document is, my understanding is that it's pretty stable. It's not going to, well, we do not expect major change from the current version to the working group last call. So what do we need now is to have confirmation from the IETF perspective that everything is well structured and okay. And then we need also the vendors experience saying, yeah, we have implemented it, we agree with the spec on the mailing, so that we're quite confident that we're throwing something that is not going to be discussed for the next 20 years because correcting bugs and so on. So that's my
feeling. I have written an independent implementation to the one that Robert's done. So Robert's written the C implementation. I've written an implementation in Perl of not quite up to date with the spec, and I will certainly do that before I send my final review through. But I have that running in the JMAP proxy code, and it works correctly with a client that's been written for it. And Neil has written a client for the library as well.
Yeah. Please indicate those. And I mean, if that's not open source, if it's open source, put the link to that.
Yeah.
Because we have a code stand thing, so I'd like to have the mapping between this RFC and the codes. If it's not open source, provide the necessary details so I can also feel the code stand thing, and so people are aware of that. And I think that would be helpful. Any information that we've made some interoperability test would be helpful, and also give us a view on the mailing list of what has been discussed on the CalConnect community, because that's also important for us.
Cool.
Okay, probably one more thing to add here, that as we are using the iCalendar data format for storage of calendaring data in Cyrus IMAP, we have a working use case for translating between these two formats, and there is also discussion with the libical C library, the open source iCal library written in C, in my opinion, that we integrate the JS calendar translation, so that would benefit other implementers to translate between these two formats back and forth. I have to say it's on edge cases, it's a lossy translation, but that's how it is when you change semantics.
Okay, so it sounds good for me. I think we have a plan. I'm asking, do we have people, I mean, the draft was very supported for adoption. So what I would like is that all these people that supported the adoption now provide their feedbacks. That would be my message. Any feedback. Do you agree or not? That's
full review would be preferred, but even knowing that, they're happy with it, they implemented it, here's a link to our implementation, or here's information, it would be useful.
Yeah. And I think that's the only thing we're waiting to send it to Working Group Last Goal or ISG. So I think it's not, the hard work has been done. So now we should not delay it more. Okay, so thank you. I don't know if there are any other business we should.
Possibly. I would like to put Ken on the spot if he's happy to talk about this. Ken, are you happy to talk about liaison with CalConnect? If you don't want to talk about it, that's fine.
I'm not sure I'm prepared to. Did you receive the email that Ron had put together or no?
Yes, I did. What do you expect? I suppose with your CalConnect hat on, what do you expect IETF side and me to do back?
I think the main point is that the large majority of the people that are in the calendaring space do a lot of the work within CalConnect.
Right.
And we're not looking to necessarily fast track things through the IETF because the IETF brings valuable reviews to the table, but we're just looking for a tighter integration where we can maybe speed up the process of moving work products out of CalConnect through the review process and into our RFC format. I guess that'd be the one-liner.
Right. Would you like me as an area director to try to find a person who can be liaison to CalConnect? I mean, there are sort of two parts to it. There is a possible procedural stuff with what IB needs to do on their end or not, depending what they decide to do, which is I cannot control. But there is also a question is, if there is official liaison, who the person should be. And I think you suggested the person, but I haven't talked to him yet.
Yeah, I guess I'll leave it up to you.
Don't say more than you want. You're happy to. I'm sorry to put you on the spot. I just sort of.
You're talking about having a liaison from IETF back into CalConnect, as opposed to from CalConnect into IETF. We talking one person or two people?
Actually, I don't know. Maybe the same person can do both ways. To be honest, I don't have much experience with creating new liaisons. I only dealt with existing ones.
Hi, this is Barry. So I do. I am the liaison from IETF to MOG, and I actually serve in both directions. Not officially, but in fact, that's how it works. They don't have any particular need to send anybody as a liaison to the IETF because I move information in both directions. The traditional thing that a liaison does is that if I'm a liaison to MOG, I would make sure the IETF learns about things that happen in MOG that they need to know about. And their liaison would pull the other way. So it's a pull thing. But Ken would be a perfect person to just be the liaison in both directions if he was willing to do that.
Sure.
Question, do you know how much process needs to be done with IAB to create a liaison?
The only process is that you need to ask the IAB to do it. In my case with MOG, back in Lisa Dussault's time, Lisa asked the IAB to create a liaison to MOG and suggested me as the person, and they deliberated for about 7 milliseconds and then did it. And then they assign a liaison shepherd for you, and that's it.
Right, so the follow-up question. So we don't need to publish any RFC on... right, okay, that's good, because RFC is quite, we have templates, liaison to IEEE or ITU, but this is just a lot of process stuff, which really we don't want to.
Those are for major liaison relationships that have political aspects and lots of work behind them. And this is going to be small. We're talking about one working group that cares, maybe two. So yeah, it's small potatoes.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Ken. So I'll try to talk to IB, in particular Ted Hardy, IB chair this week, and see what we can do. Because the reason why I raise this would actually hopefully help with getting information back and forth and getting more reviews, or at least, for somebody. In ideal world, CalConnect people should just participate directly on IETF mailing list. It's an open mailing list, and they should just post comments here. We've tried to do this before. I'm sure Barry had struggles while he was area director with this working group as well. But even if we can have a single person proxying from other people and, combining comments and sending them as a batch, I think this would be still better than nothing.
Right. Yeah, so that's the thing with how it works with MOG. I talked to them there about you guys should bring your work here. I talked to them about we have working groups in the IETF that you should be paying attention to. Please go there and participate in them. I'm not lobbing liaison statements back and forth, which would be kind of silly to send myself a liaison statement. But so I don't think we're ever going to have formal liaison statements in this relationship. It would just be Ken or whoever saying, I think this work is ready to bring to the IETF now. We should do it sooner rather than later, which is the main issue that we have, that we get stuff too late. I think there'll probably be very little that you need to pull in the other direction. That IETF is working on this, CalConnect, you ought to know about it, is probably going to be fairly minimal.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, because well, one thing is for us to be able to move forward the documents, so have an understanding on how much it has been discussed, and but the other thing is that if we have finalized document, then I mean the margin for changing is becoming very narrow, and we can also be in deadlock situations. So that's what we would like to avoid. So as soon as possible, it would be good that even though all the work is not being made publicly, I mean, if we have an early version, that's maybe something we can work on. Yeah.
Yes.
Before it's too late.
So that's the issue of saying to CalConnect, I am saying to CalConnect that this work is mature enough. Let's get it into the IETF while they can still help us get it done. And then the other direction, the IETF's document is ready for working group last call. CalConnect people, you please review it also and post your reviews to the CALEXT mailing list. That would be mostly what the flow would be.
Yeah, that's that's something important for, I mean, the ongoing process of the working group. Ken is in the list. I'm giving.
Yeah, I've been doing my best to get the CalConnect members to do exactly what Barry suggested. The one impediment that I see to be running into is some of the CalConnect members, especially some of the larger vendors, and you can probably guess who I'm talking about, are leery of posting their acceptance of certain things on a public mailing list because they fear that it's leaking out what they're currently working on. And I'm not sure how to get around that barrier.
I guess the only thing I would suggest for that is to tell them that it's certainly very clear to everybody who works in the IETF that your review of a document is your personal technical review of what's there and not any commitment from your company to implement it. And if you say that often enough, maybe they'll get it.
Yeah, we've been saying that, and hopefully it gets through. It was a lot easier with our friend and colleague Cyrus Dabou. Now that he's not in calendaring, some of the new folks are leery as to what they can and can't say.
Right. With my AD hat on, and if I want to be a bad cop, if we will continue not to have any reviews on documents, then what I should be doing as area director is closing the working group and send all of your documents to independent stream editor. And then you will have to convince independent stream editor that they need to be published as RFC. I'm just saying, this is an option, and I would rather.
Rephrase that for Ken.
Okay, yeah, and Ken, I'm not trying to be grumpy with you. I'm just,
No, I'm not taking it that way.
Yeah, okay.
So to rephrase that in a manner that can be taken back to CalConnect, the message is, if you want the documents published in the IETF, we have to have the reviews from you guys. And if you're not willing to publish, to post public reviews of these documents, we don't have enough reviews to declare consensus and publish them.
Understood. And just leaping back to JS Calendar real quick, I do have commitments from 2 developers at a large vendor to review that draft, and I'm going to stay on them. Hopefully they follow through.
Ron Gondwana, just to answer everyone in the IETF understands that you're just posting it yourself. That's not the audience that they're worried about. They're worried about some tech news site getting their hands on this public mailing list posting and plastering the front pages of tech news with big company is doing this in a way that they're not allowed to say. And then it comes back to individual developer wrote this thing. Individual developer gets in very hot water through no fault of their own and through no fault of this process, but because the tech media are going to just do crap like that.
So we haven't seen that happen. People post reviews in the IETF all the time, and their companies never get this showing up in the press. I guess somebody could always preface their review with, I have no idea whether my company will implement this or not, but here are my technical comments on the content.
We'll comment. You can also just be sure to post from a personal email account, not from a company email account.
Right. Get a Gmail account or whatever. I want to say something and I forgot. Never mind.
Okay, right. So just another comment on the independent stream. Is the stream for non-IETF work, so it's open to anyone, but then it does not become standard. It's remain experimental or informational.
Correct.
And it's a longer process. I mean, I don't know if we can say longer than what we have now, but
it's hard to say whether the process is long or not. You have to, the way it works, you talk directly to independent stream editor, which is Adrian Farrell. He has a review panel. He will have to find at least a couple of reviewers. He will also review it himself and decide whether it's worth publishing. The process might or might not be quicker or longer. I think it depends on the document. But I think he will struggle with the same thing. He requires at least 2 reviewers. So he will probably come back to me and say, well, can you recommend the reviewers for this? So the bar is arguably slightly lower, but it's still a process you need to do. Well, if you have to have them as standards track, you have to do it here. You cannot do standards track through independent stream. There is no way around this. So hopefully this is enough carrot and enough stick. So.
Okay, right. So any other questions? Then I think we can adjourn the meeting. Everyone signed the blue sheet? Yeah. So I'm waiting for the minutes and I will post everything. And thank you for attending the meeting. Thank you for the people online, because I know for some of you it was pretty early in the morning.
Yeah. Almost depends. I used to have a coworker who would say, if you see him before 2 p.m.
Okay, thank you.